Welcome to today's sprint. This is shaping up to be another fantastic weekend. A lap of the Miami Grand Prix features 3.36 miles of track around the Hard Rock Stadium, and 19 corners make up the Miami International Autodrome, which will challenge the drivers in a tight wheel-to-wheel race. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks for today's sprint. Kelly lines up on pole position, and Mark Webber completes the front row. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Verstappen, Hamilton, Russell, Albon, Ricciardo, Hauger, Sargent, Bottas, Tsunoda, Gasly, Leclerc, Sainz, Hülkenberg, Joe, Oscar Piastri, Perez, Fernando Alonso, Ocon, Norris, and Lance Stroll brings the grid to a close. Which of these drivers will get pole position today? We'll soon find out. And alongside me, a man, well, what more can I say? But he's a legend. Anthony Davidson. Well, they say that a change is as good as a rest, and whilst there's not much rest on show in the sprint format today, there's definitely a change to what we're usually seeing on the track. As we all know, every single driver wants to know what's required of them, and in the case of this driver, I think things are pretty stable at the moment. They're doing what the team require.
Well, that's the thing, as a driver, it's easy to feel like you're the individual, it's all about you, and, you want to further your career the best you can, but you have to have the team hat on as well and play the team game, work with your teammate as best you can. It's not an easy balance to figure out.
Here we go then, the formation lap is underway ahead of today's sprint. As all the cars take their positions on the grid, the final preparations have been made, and all that's left is for the drivers to deliver on track.
state DRS will be enabled this lap. You can use it when you're within 1 second of the car ahead and in the DRS zone. You might experience some understeer now that you're in the wake of the car ahead. Try to get past as soon as possible. outnumber your teammates. Okay, final lap, let's go, final lap. I'm proud of you, man. That was a good job. You did really well out there. Superb driving.
So with the sprint concluded, join us next time for qualifying and of course the main event, this weekend's Formula One Grand Prix. We'll see you next time. Welcome back to Miami and welcome to qualifying. Only raw speed will separate these drivers today, but the question is, who's got what it takes to get pole?
Bear with us a few minutes. I'm afraid we're losing hydraulic pressure. There's a leak somewhere in the system, so just sit tight for a bit. Drop to P11. 2022. You're currently on the front row. Nice work.
Florida is no stranger to world-class sport, and as of 2022, the USA's Sunshine State is now on the F1 calendar. Welcome back to the Magic City for the Miami Grand Prix. With great opportunities for wheel-to-wheel battles featuring 19 corners, 3.36 miles long, and expected average speeds of 138 miles an hour, the Miami International Autodrome will be sure to create lots of chances to overtake. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. Mark Webber lines up on pole position, and Kelly completes the front row. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Norris, Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez, Fernando Alonso, Stroll, Oscar Piastri, Sainz, Russell, Gasly, Hamilton, Hülkenberg, Albon, Tsunoda, Hauger, Joe, Ricciardo, Bottas, Sargent, and Esteban Ocon lines up at the back of the grid. Now it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track. Well, it's been a long time since I last worked with you. Good to see you again today, Anthony Davidson. And let's talk momentum with this driver. What a sprint it was. They start at 0 once again for today, but with a huge amount of confidence, surely. Well, they'll definitely be glad that there's not a sprint race today. Let's face it, the sprint couldn't have gone much worse, but what we're looking for today is a reaction. I know what we've got to do before the start of today's race, but what about our driver? What do the final hours look like for them?
Well, for them, you've got your pre-race rituals that you go through. You see different drivers that, some have got their headphones on, they're listening to the music. Some drivers really absorb the energy from the crowd and they're there waving to them. Other drivers, they go within themselves. They chat to their engineers, absorbing that information, that vital information that you need to carry you through the race. And, those pre-race rituals are essential to making things systematic. We do a lot of Grand Prix in a season, and the more systematic you can be, the easier you are within that environment.
The formation lap gets underway then, and it's going to be interesting today to see how the dry conditions could affect the lifespan of the tyres. As the cars come back towards the grid to line up for the start of the race, each driver will be wanting to get the best start they possibly can. And they'll be hoping to finish today's race on the podium, and failing that, within the points.
Okay, not a great start, but let's get back on track. Now use DRS. DRS now available. Watch out for understeer in the wake of the car ahead. Try to get past as quickly as you can. Push, push. Good job. Job. That was the fastest lap of the race so far. We're approaching the pit window now, and you're going to be on hards next time. The car behind started to drop back. There's a gap beginning to form. Let's make the most of it. You're currently in P10. Okay, Hulkenberg just ahead. Push, push. They're on fresh mediums. Hamilton's behind you now. Less than a second separates you. They're on fresh mediums. Okay, gap to leader, 12.5 seconds. And your pit window opens in 2 laps' time. In this lap, push now. We're slowly gaining on the car in front. Try to keep up this momentum. Remember, box this lap. Keep an eye on your distance to the speed limit line as you approach and make sure you don't speed. Okay, stay clear of the white line on the exit. We'll receive a penalty for dangerous driving if you cross onto the track. We've got a lot of spare energy, okay to use your overtake button. Here's some information on Russell for you. They've got some kind of mechanical problem. Mark is in the pit lane. Mark in the pits now. Green flag. Mark's coming in for his stop. You need to slow down before hitting the corners. We don't want to get a penalty. Brilliant, nice move, keep going. Currently sat in 6th. Piastri ahead. Okay, they're on fresh hards. Okay, Sainz is behind you. Okay, the gap is less than a second. Okay, they're on fresh hards. The distance to the leader, 13.1 seconds. Pit strategy complete. See these tyres through to the end now. And gap to the car in front, 3.1 seconds. Okay, so all of our tyre pressure data is currently reading 0. Assuming they still look inflated to you, we're going to guess that it's just a bad sensor. Shouldn't be anything to worry about.